Welcome, everybody, to the Yalla podcast. My name is Alon,
Hi, Malik.
and today we have with us the lovely guest Sim. Sim, you want to say a few words about yourself?
Sure. I'm an anti-Zionist Jew from the United States. Am have gotten a big following on TikTok and Instagram talking about Palestine over the last 17 months. And I was actually asked by a Palestinian publisher to write a book about the things I've been talking about called Genocide Bad. And that's coming out in 3 days. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Uh,
exciting.
okay, Alec, you want to talk a little bit about this podcast in general and our current guest and why we decided to invite them on?
So me and Alon were both anti-Zionists. We're um, lately I like the term survivors of Zionist education. Yesterday I watched a movie that I want to tell the viewers and you guys you need to watch too. It's called Izkor. It's about like remember, and it's about the Israeli propaganda system. It follows families and school, and they're going through Passover, um, the Holocaust Memorial Day, and the Memorial Day for the soldiers, the Israeli soldier. And it shows you the propaganda. And I was like, fuck, I'm a survivor of that, and I'm still fighting on my life. It's not like so we're both anti-Zionists and we're living in occupied Palestine, even though, so it's always the question, how we define ourselves, Hebrew Jews, Hebrew Palestinians in the future or in the present, I don't know. But we're both, this is the aim of this channel, to have conversations with people who share our vision of one democratic state and eventually no states, because we're also anarchists, and it's also something about this channel. And we thought that we've both have been following you, Sim, in social media, and we really long time we really said, wow, like it could be perfect to have you on. So I'm really excited.
Me too. I'm
And
excited here. I've watched a lot of your clips and stuff. So yeah, really
nice, it's
Amazing.
appreciate
nice.
the work y'all do.
Yeah, and I wonder where is a good point to kick off. It's just like I'm just now reading your book,
Mhm.
like I'm into it. So, and it's really, really well written, and it's really good for me, and I could resemble with a lot of it, even though we're coming from different backgrounds. And yeah,
Yeah. I want to start. I think we should start in the weeds with what we just discovered right before the podcast because I don't want to
okay,
forget to talk about it. And it's so
okay, let's
interesting.
go.
So we need to catch the listeners up to speed. So right
Yeah, please.
before Yeah, right before we signed on, I was asking Alon how to say, and am I saying your name right, Alon?
Yeah, that's like 90% accurate, which
Okay.
is the best that I can hope for.
Okay. So I'm recording this book now for audiobook. And so there was a name of a kibbutz that
Yeah.
I don't know how to say. I don't speak Hebrew. I didn't know how to say it.
So I will say it. I will say it.
Yes, I
The
wanted to get
name
it kind of close. Yeah, what's the name?
the name of the kibbutz is לוחמי הגטאות.
Yes, which means, I believe, the ghetto fighters, right?
Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
Yes. And so I needed it for the audiobook because it's in the chapter called But Hamas, which is about armed resistance and it's about how do you you know, have these arguments with Zionists when they're like asking you to condemn Hamas, condemn armed resistance. And so as part of that chapter, I talk about, well, as Jews, we're very familiar with stories of armed resistance, like through the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. This is very much like lionized in our culture and celebrated. Like no one cries over dead Nazis these days. And but I found as I was like doing some research for this chapter about this kibbutz was founded by one of the uh survivors, one of the fighters, one of the ghetto fighters, and he had this quote. I put a pin in it. And I just couldn't believe it because it's on stolen Palestinian land. And he said, this was Yitzhak Zuckerman. He said, this isn't a subject for study in military school. If there's a school to study the human spirit, there it should be a major subject. The important things about the uprising were inherent in the force shown by Jewish youth after years of degradation to rise up against their destroyers and determine what death they would choose, Treblinka or uprising. And it's like,
Wow.
how do you not see that
Yeah.
Palestinians were going to
But the
eventually...
other guy did. What's his name? Edelman.
I don't know. So
And
tell us about you. You were saying you have a
no, so
personal
first I
connection.
want to say, yeah, so my father grew up in that kibbutz. He knew Yitzhak Zuckerman personally. He was one of the figures that was, he grew up around as a child. And my father also wrote a children book on his childhood at that kibbutz. But just as anything in Israeli cultures, the Palestinians, for example, are not mentioned even. They're just like they are a non-existent thing. The only thing that the Palestinians, for example, I remember when he read me this story. So he was, so they say they remember when they were children and they were going to, there was one story how they got lost in the area of the kibbutz. And the kid says, wow, remember what the adult said, that there was infiltrators. Now, what is infiltrators? Infiltrators is the name in Hebrew, mistanenim. It's back then was like saying today terrorists.
Yes. It's today's mechabel.
Yeah, and what were the infiltrators? Most of them refugees who were trying to get back home or to take something they left. And this kibbutz, big part of it is built on the ruins of a huge village. So who knows? And these people who were coming to get food and stuff were shot by soldiers. Like Benny Morris wrote about it in Border Wars. Dan, also our friend Dan, told me a lot about this. So it's yeah, and this is where today there was like, yeah, so this kibbutz, many of my childhood memories are from there. It used to be for me as a child some kind of a safe haven, a place that you go and it's beautiful and green. And only later on I understood that it was even built on a Palestinian village. I didn't know all that stuff.
So this is something that I want to emphasize. That you read this quote, and this is like the story of the kibbutz, and it's part of the history of this place. And this is part of also like the political analysis of what happened in this place, because this kibbutz kind of represents the Zionist project in general. But for us, it's not theoretical. For us, it's not something theoretical. You see, Elik has a completely personal connection to this story. But even though I don't have such a personal connection to this story, I know like the narrative, right? The narrative that of the heroism of the fighters in the Warsaw Ghetto. I know this narrative, and I know how it connects to the narrative of Zionism. And I can see very clearly how the interpretation of the story for Zionists changes completely when the picture is reversed, when the heroes or terrorists are on the other side. And I think that this is the kind of thing that we want to do in this conversation, to go to like the personal aspect of all of this and really compare our experiences in a very detailed way.
Well, and I'm just curious because obviously Zuckerman spoke so eloquently about like the obviousness that teenagers after years of degradation would resist violently. Like some of them would pick up arms.
Mm-hmm.
Like what is the how how
Yeah.
is that not applied to Palestinians? You know what I mean? Like how are we not
But
transferring
that's
that
the
understanding?
reality. That's the reality of living in this place.
Yeah.
This state of being like, but what? How? What? Like, but like, this is the constant state of living here. And Elik and I speak about this a lot in our various, podcasts. This weird experience that I think is only present in like this thing that has many faces, the cult face, the fascism face, the colonialism face. It's like whenever there is such a project that relies on lies, manipulation, obfuscation, inversion so much, the subjects of this project would become insane. It's a collective insanity. It's just, I think this is what we want to talk about this weird collective insanity it's very malignant, right? Well,
Yeah.
it caused a genocide, and genocide is, I hear it's bad.
It's bad.
It's bad. It's bad.
You
But
know what
when
I
we live
like?
here, they don't act like it's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Like, I think this title catches a lot because it's something so simple that we want that. Like, but Genocide Bad, it's like the kid that's just pointing something and then he encounters huge, like you said, this huge bullshit that you have to, like you describe it in your book. Maybe we can now go a bit into your, like, how you started off.
The bullshit mountain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the bullshit mountain.
Yeah, just basically that Israeli propaganda, it's like this mountain of bullshit is this analogy that and when I started arguing with Zionists on the internet, I felt like I would like pick one little pebble up off the ground and be like, look, it's bullshit, and then throw it over the side. But then every time I was doing that, I was getting just inundated with Zionist comments. So you get 1,000 more bullshit pebbles flung back at you. And so it felt very overwhelming. But then what I realized is you don't have to contradict every single lie for people who are not totally indoctrinated to realize the whole mountain is bullshit. So that's why in the US, we've been so much more successful at building an anti-Zionist movement over the past 17 months because people aren't really that invested in Israel. And once you show them like 3 or 4 lies that they've learned about Israel and they're like, oh shit, really? Oh shit, really? Oh shit, really? Then they realize the whole thing is bullshit. And then, it's not as difficult to convince them as the people who are fully indoctrinated.
That's
And
really interesting what you're saying because I feel like we want to contrast the experiences. I feel like growing up here, this mountain of bullshit that you describe, it's something that I think I experienced for every single day that I was politically conscious. It's like all the time. You start thinking, you start believing that this mountain of bullshit is the truth. You start doubting your very basic, and I think that if you're not really, really strong and really, really stubborn, like they used to tell me all the time that I was stubborn. Okay. So there is something here. That if you're not really, really stubborn, which means you're not really connected to your own truth, it's, I think, hard, extremely hard, impossible to withstand this mountain of bullshit.
Yeah.
And I think also another thought that I have is that each and every one of us has this experience of a crack in this wall of defense, right? The mountain of bullshit, I don't know, I continue the analogy, but the mountain of bullshit creates a wall of defense from reality that separates you from reality. And then there's like a crack. and this is like one pebble that falls, but it causes an avalanche. So
Yeah.
like there's a difference between people who are completely closed off because they live here and the bullshit is all around us so much,
Yeah.
and people, I don't know. So let's talk about these cracks in the wall of defense.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, again, like the walls of my Zionism, to use your
Yeah.
analogy, were much
Yes.
thinner, you know,
Okay.
and shorter than I'm sure yours, like vastly. So I was raised, my family's, I mean, first of all, I'm a patrilineal Jew, just on my dad's side, although always felt a lot more connected to like my Jewishness than my Christian family. Um, had, you know, I talk a lot about my upbringing in the eighth chapter of the book. That part's kind of a memoir about like my connection to Judaism and everything. I won't get into all that. But the Zionism I grew up with was just like an acceptance of the fact that Israel had been gifted to the Jews by this benevolent world order after World War II as a sorry for the Holocaust. And there was like no mention of Palestinians. There was nothing about that, about how, you know, who was living on the land. There was just no curiosity. That was just not a part of the story. You know, that was so that was the Israeli narrative. And I had, you know, Jewish family and Jewish friends that were more conservative, more religious, and more entwined with Israel. And they felt very strongly about Israel. And so like there was always this like pressure, not from my nuclear family, but from like outside the family to be like, oh yeah, you should really go to Israel someday. You know, you should Israel, it's, you know, you're gonna just love it. It's so important, you know, you have to care about Israel. And I just like did, but I didn't get it as a kid. I was like, I
Were
don't
you
care.
offered to
I
go on
don't,
Taglit as well?
huh?
Did you get a chance to go on Taglit?
Oh,
The
birthright?
Birthright, yeah, Birthright. Yeah,
You know,
that.
like by that age, I just had absolutely no interest. I
Mm,
could have, and I
mm,
have relatives who did, and I had people who like urged me to,
mm.
but I just had no interest. It's like I'm one like you. I think I'm kind of perverse. You know, I'm kind of stubborn. When an authority figure tells me I'm supposed to care about something that I don't, I'm like, no, thank you. You know, like so there was always this weird pressure. And I didn't understand it. I didn't understand the intensity behind it. So there was always like something sus about
Mhm,
Israel for
mhm.
me. And I was just like, why do I want to go there? Like, I wanted to go to Japan as a kid really badly. I wanted to go to Japan. I wanted to go to France, like places where like there were, you know, were video
But
games.
you know what makes me curious?
Mm-hmm.
That I think why for American, like, because when you describe yourself, it sounds like, yeah, the that's the normal way to react to that. Like, why would I want to go there, and why would I want
Yeah.
to go? So why it still catches so many young Jewish Americans? Like, what's the thing? I don't get it. Why for them when they have home and they're safe, and usually they're from very good economic background, like
Yeah.
not always, but so what's the thing? Like,
Again, I think it's the group think, you know, and my whole family, we've always been kind of allies. So you talk about anarchists, like my great grandparents were anarchists. My
Mhm.
great grandmother learned English from Emma Goldman in Brooklyn.
wow,
Emma
wow.
Goldman taught English lessons to newly arrived Jewish women so they could
I'm
bring
ignorant. Who
power.
is Emma Goldman? I will represent
The
the audience
famous
who is.
famous anarchist
Okay.
What
writer from
kind of
the
an
I'm
anarchist
such
are
an
you?
yeah.
anarchist that I don't even know the famous
That's
anarchist.
okay. That's
That
okay.
makes you a better anarchist, actually.
Yeah, you don't need to know like Victorian anarchists. So, but yeah, so I come from this like anarchist Jewish secular tradition, and that generation, their parents, so my great great grandfather had been this Talmudic scholar, this really seriously religious guy. Um, and his son hated him and like hated religion. He had been abusive, so like that's when the family like turned away from religion and was like, no.
But still they had the Zionism part remaining.
Well, So my grandfather, so my grandfather was like, he died when I was like a baby, but I grew up hearing stories of him. He was like not a self-described anarchist, but he was like, I think he was a communist. He was a communist like party member. He was a writer in Hollywood. He would like offer his name to people who'd been blacklisted under McCarthyism.
Oh,
They couldn't publish because they were like named as communists. So
yes, yes.
he was like a stealth communist.
Oh, that's cool.
And so uh he but he loved Israel. And he went there, he traveled there a couple times, but my dad says that if he was alive now, he would fucking hate it and be against all of it. He just didn't know. He just didn't know the Palestinian story at all. And there was no way for American Jews at that time to even hear about Palestinians. Like Israel had so much more control of its international narrative. And so, my grandfather was just completely, he thought it was like a communist place. He believed in the like kibbutzes are socialist and all of this. And yeah, I just think he never got exposed to the Palestinian narrative at all. So that kind of my dad and I have sort of like become anti-Zionists together around the same time, just like as these narratives have come out. For me, it was meeting some anti-Zionist Jews in college. And it was mostly just reading books, which is why I wrote a book. That's my approach. I was like, I should figure out what's going on in Palestine, and so I started reading books about it.
But were you interested? Like, I really want to zoom in on this process because I think it's really important for our audience to understand, and for us also to understand,
Yeah.
like these two different states of consciousness. One of them where you're in some way, for some it's more, for some it's less, but when you're in some way like captured by consciously, like your consciousness is captured by the cult and by the obfuscation and lies of the cult, and this other situation where you just we're not talking about enlightenment, okay? We're talking about just seeing reality, like basic facts. It's not complicated. No one is saying that we're actually saying that it's simple, right? We're just saying this is colonialism bad. This is genocide bad. Very, very simple things. But this shift from being captured to being able to see simple facts and to think rationally and to feel what is going on, it's a very interesting transition, in my opinion, and very important one to because we need to do it. We need to do it for like millions of people at some point.
Yeah. Part of
Yeah.
the process is also unlearning racism. Like a huge part of the process is being willing, because this is an extremely racist ideology. Like to erase an entire people, to suppress their narrative so much, to treat them as like their deaths as just unavoidable collateral damage, to see them all as terrorists is incredibly racist. And so actually I was I've been thinking about the differences between Israel and the US and our activism in preparation for this. And oh, kitty. And sorry, so I was saying I've been thinking about the differences.
Smoothly taking the cat out.
Yes, it was very, very cute. So I think that in the US, we've been having a lot of conversations my entire lifetime around race and deconstructing racism. And that really that is the George Floyd movements of 2020 and the Ferguson Black Lives Matter movement of 2013. And before that, the Occupy Wall Street and the Arab Spring, this was like a theme of my last novel, which was The Free People's Village, is that every like social movement is laying the groundwork for the next one. So I think that like part of we wouldn't have had this giant anti-Zionist movement in the United States if we hadn't had the George Floyd protests in 2020, which wakened so many white people up to their own racism. They started being willing to confront their white privilege, their structural racism. We started learning these terms. We started learning more about colonialism and apartheid, and that movement couldn't have existed without Ferguson in 2013. So, I think we've been laying the groundwork throughout my life, and people of my generation, millennials, and the younger generation, Gen Z, which grew up with this terminology, were really primed to recognize, oh, we've been fighting injustice against Black people in the United States. What's happening in Palestine looks actually very much more severe, like way, like really, and this is really intense. This is more like, legally, it's more like the Jim Crow South and the West Bank. And in Gaza, it's like the Holocaust. So, they saw those commonalities. And so I think that's a big difference. And you didn't have those social movements in Israel, and it's a very difficult thing to confront that you're racist and your whole culture is racist and all your elders are racist and
No,
like
and I must
everyone's got a lot of work to do.
jump in and say that I'm just like, because of this movie I watched yesterday, and it showed me something that I experienced.
Mm.
And you were like, fuck, this is totalitarian, cultish shit, like person who comes out of that and he is not mentally fucked up. It's you don't get. I forgot how intense this shit is, how everything, like, because he follows there with the camera the kids, and then he asks the kids, what did you learn? And all different holidays, different events. In the past, we were weak. Now we are together, and now we're strong because we have a state. And all of the children know to say that, in 7 years old, then when they're and he follows also the adults, and when they grow older, it's starting to be around the conscription to the army, and it's very clear, and you see their whole class, none of them can resist that, and it's beyond. And when people come to me and say, like, Israelis, they're so fucked up, and I think the mass indoctrination that's going on here is not enough recognized, and when you see it, you also have some compassion to people who grew up in this and had no tools to resist. And I hope that today we have a bit more, because they can go and find you on Instagram. It's like, it's not, and like people like we're doing this series of getting out of the Zionist cults. So you see people like us who went on the internet and saw stuff. So I hope that what we're doing also will help this process. But
I know y'all feel probably very isolated, but I'm sure you're making a difference over there. Like, you have no idea who you're impacting. It's what you just said though about what the kids in school say in Israel, the same indoctrination is happening in the US. They just have, like, so I thought about when my my middle child was about to start preschool. I was looking for preschools for her, and I thought maybe the temple would be okay, like the reform one, And I went to go check it out. I obviously, like, I would love to have a temple that I could go to for holidays, like have that community. But the Zionism thing has always been like a no. But I thought maybe for preschool would be okay. I went to tour the preschool. I was appalled. Like, all those little kids, like, they've got 3-year-olds touting that line, and they've got Israeli flags everywhere. And it's
when
like,
was this?
the curriculum is Israel.
When was this?
This was like 4 years ago.
Okay, so pre-October 7th, and already.
Pre-October 7th, yes.
Yeah,
but I'm sure it's still, I'm sure
it's worse. I'm sure it's worse now.
Yeah, it's probably worse.
Yeah.
So the U.S. Jews, so you were asking about, like, why do other U.S. Jews, I didn't go to Jewish day school. And in fact, probably a big reason that I grew up in, and I talk about this in the book, I grew up in rural Illinois. I grew up among Christians in the cornfields, very conservative area, okay? I was the only Jew for several towns. Like, we were the only Jewish family, you know what I mean?
And you didn't experience anti-Semitism?
No, I experienced, and I talk about this in the book, I experienced interpersonal anti-Jewish hate.
Yes.
Which is a very different thing from like structural racism or structural. I don't think that like structural anti-Jewish oppression exists in the United States. It doesn't. Like median income of Jews is significantly higher than median income for all other identity groups. Like we're doing fine. But if you are the only Jewish kid
Yes, of course.
in a Christian town in the middle of nowhere, you will get asked where your horns are. Like that.
So I think it's important to emphasize this, that there's like different kinds of racism, and any phenomenon that's worth talking about is more complex than just, a simple definition. And racism is complex. There's a lot of different ways that racism expresses itself, and there are worse ways than others.
Yeah.
And interpersonal racism is unpleasant, dangerous, and completely morally reprehensible, and should stop immediately.
Yeah.
Not the same as systemic racism. And the arguments that we can raise regarding interpersonal racism and systemic racism are different, okay? And the conclusions are different. For example, in systemic racism, you get inherent difference in material conditions. So this is very important to dismantle, okay? It's way more important to dismantle than the other racism, which is also bad, okay?
And just worth mentioning, all the interpersonal like anti-Jewish sentiment I've gotten in my life, all from Christians. Never from a Muslim person or an Arab person, just from white Christians.
Interesting.
Yeah. But it's also,
Elik?
racism is such a...
There is a problem with your microphone?
Is it okay now?
Yeah, continue.
Like, because many Israelis and people and Zionists, they say we are not racist, and there is and it's not because of racism. And then I always find it when I confront people and I say like, yeah, but just imagine that someone would apply the same moral principles that you apply on them, like, for example, throw a bomb on your house because there's some bad guy there and kill all your family. Would you think that's acceptable price that somebody in your country will pay? Like, it's so simple. And because in a way, I think like racism is the heart of the issue, but it's hard to get people to, can you get a person even to understand that he's saying something racist, or that racism is what motivates him to say what he say? Like, I find this, because if some racist guy will tell you, know what, you're right, I'm racist, and I value the life of Palestinians differently, it would be easier somewhat, but nobody is doing that. And
they don't say that?
Some do, but then
some
we give
are
up.
Like human animals.
Some of them do, but the racism that I confront with people, like from my family, from close friends,
it's overt.
And it's overt, and sometimes it's more frustrating. And like, at least admit that
it's covert. I mean, it's covert.
Covert.
I said the wrong word.
Are your families liberal Zionists? Then would you say, yeah,
most of them. Like, none of them is now supporting what's going on, and like,
whoop-de-doo. 18
Yeah.
months later, right? It's
18 months later.
So they want the genocide to end. I mean, I know they don't call it a genocide, but
my mother already calling it a genocide.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You did good work. Elik.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about this like mental image that I got from our conversation, because I think it's something to think about. Like, you talk about people in the US who have been going through processes in the last few, let's say, few decades. Let's say, of like being more politically aware. And you connect it also to processes all around the world where people are becoming, let's say the Western world, where people are becoming more aware. and aware of their own privilege and aware of their own place in the system. So there's much to be said about how real this process is in the US, and I think this is also like we need to examine this. But when you were talking, I looked at Israel, okay? Israel that doesn't really exist, okay, but it exists around me. What can I do? It's a thing that guides people around me. And I thought about that there were supposedly similar processes in Israel as well. In 2011, there was a huge social protest in Israel that is not discussed enough.
During the Arab Spring?
Yes, it was like at the same time. I personally was at a protest in Kikar Hamdina, like the State Square in Tel Aviv. It's one of the biggest squares in Tel Aviv, where there were reportedly 500,000 people.
Wow.
And I heard people talking about justice, and I heard people talking about equality and education and stuff like that. And I was naive and I didn't understand that they were only talking about Jews, okay? Exclusively about justice for Jews, and even not that, but never mind. But I felt this. I felt the optimism. I felt this. Was it completely fake? What is going on here? The wave in the US, something is happening, but here it's not. Why? What is the difference? Maybe it's just easier to say in the US, yeah, I'm pro-Palestine. It's like you don't really lose anything. It's just I don't know. I don't know how to explain all this.
I mean, it's definitely easier in the US. I mean, to deconstruct Zionism for me and for you guys, you've had a harder road. Like,
yeah.
There's so much. You're just surrounded by the most intense Zionists in the world. Like it's just, it's I don't know. And a lot of, the social justice in the US weren't like glorious triumphs. I mean, what changed was ephemeral and not for everybody. Most of the people that participated, they put black squares in their profile pictures for racial justice, but they changed nothing meaningfully about their lives. They didn't do any real self-examination. A lot of right now Trump is targeting all these like DEI programs that corporations put in place to make their corporations' internal staff culture less racist. But like when you're talking about DEI initiatives at Dow Chemical and Lockheed Martin, like these corporations, or Amazon, corporations that do horrors, in the world. DEI was a band-aid to begin with, like on just a completely racist, unjust, imperial colonial system. So a lot of people feel like those movements, like the people who were in the streets got concussions, got beat up by cops, got arrested, got rap sheets, so it was very destructive in the aftermath. So it felt like we lost, and it felt like everything was destroyed, and it felt like we didn't accomplish anything. Police budgets after the George Floyd protest universally across the country ballooned, exploded. Democrats ushered Democratic mayors, gave their cops millions and millions more dollars across the board.
You misunderstood the request. You misunderstood what we asked for. Right.
Never were really interested in what we were asking for at all, if you ask me. And built these cop cities. There's like dozens of cop cities now being built where they can practice, where they can go learn from Israeli IOF soldiers how to brutalize an urban population, and then they can go back and practice these skills in their little pretend cities so they can practice crushing any public dissent. So that's the world that we got after the George Floyd protest, which feels like a total loss to some people.
Yes, okay.
But I do think there was this like deeper cultural, some self-examination, some process. So it takes time, is what I'm saying. Like it's not.
So this is why I'm asking this, because So on a superficial level, I want to know if I need to be optimistic or pessimistic, okay? But on a deeper level, I think that it's really important to understand what we're up against, okay? And I feel like I personally still don't, okay? I feel like the system is like you started talking about how it's all interconnected, okay? And I really don't know if the thing that you're describing happening in the US is the real deal or not. Because I know that here in my society, people were talking in a similar way, in a liberal way, okay? And I know that the moment that October 7th happened, all of it went to shit. It was just a charade. I did not understand how deeply it was a charade. And after October 7th, I understood. On October, I don't know, 11th, I posted something on Instagram in Hebrew where I talked to Israelis. And I look back at it and I was like, okay, you were being naive. You were being naive about what was going on. And to me, what I found out after October 7th is that all of this is a thin veneer of civility that capitalism appropriates, capitalism and imperialism and colonialism appropriates all the so-called social justice movements, feminism in Israel is fucked up, okay? Like, think of like J.K. Rowling's feminism, even worse, okay? Like it's fucked up feminism in Israel, and like social justice, like anti-capitalism, all of it is appropriated by the colonialist system. You talked about your grandfather, right? Who mistook Israel to be a communist paradise. This is a deep level of appropriation, and I don't know how to. I don't know. I'm throwing things out there. Please help me
But
understand.
I have some.
Okay.
I had thought about it. That's like I'm thinking about the movement in the US that you said that after George Floyd, many like white people really understood something. So it means there was a change, right, in people's minds. And then the system understand it and doing something. It's like they let this Oscar of no other land win, for example. They're not stupid. There's a reason why they let it win. They see that there's big pro-Palestine movement and they want somehow. And so I think when corporations, for example, saying we're doing this to make it more equal, and you can say, but it means that the movement had some impact and it has to keep pushing and not say, oh, they're nice to us, they gave us something. Like if you react like and say like, okay, thank you, establishment, you changed your language in order, so you lost. And if you keep pushing, you can win more. Like, I don't know, that's kind of how I...
No, I agree. And I think that, yeah, we have to be really smart and savvy activists, and we have to transmit to the younger generations all the things that we've learned about the way we're going to get co-opted. There's this wonderful book I keep talking about. It's called Elite Capture by Olufemi Otaiwo. And like the
Can you say
subtitle,
it again, but more slowly? Oh, show us the book. Wonderful.
okay.
That's even better.
Elite Capture, How the Powerful Took Over Identity Politics and Everything Else by Olufemi Otaiwo. It's all about how elite do exactly this process you're talking about. You know, they co-opt social justice movements, hijack it, and weaponize it against the left. We have to be aware of that. We have to be savvy. I'm continually talking online, and every time I do, some people act like I'm like, I don't know if y'all know Charlie from It's Always Sunny in front of the whiteboard. It's like a meme
Yeah.
string behind him, you know? So like, but I talk a lot about Israeli sock puppets and how not just every country in the world, but mostly Israel. And increasingly every corporation in the world employs sock puppets and bots to pretend to be people online who may be the opposite of them. Israel runs thousands of pro-Palestine social media accounts to just fuck with us and cause chaos. And that is the reality. Israel has admitted to this. There have been reports on it. Israel makes them available for hire to corporations who do this to infiltrate movements. So we have to be savvy on that level. You have to assume that anyone you're just like talking to in the comments, anyone who might be commenting on a post, just because they have a Palestine flag in their bio, does not mean they're not an Israeli Mossad agent. Like, you have to be really smart and savvy. And yeah, we have to take the political education of our fellows and of our comrades, I think, very, very, very seriously, and be a lot less naive than we have been in the past. After this past 17 months, when I look at the social justice activism that I was involved with for like 20 years before, for my entire life before, I look back now and I see so much wasted energy.
Mm-hmm.
Energy wasted on symbolism and semantics when we should have been focusing on life and death shit,
Yeah.
on housing people and feeding people and keeping them from being murdered. Like, that is where the focus should have been. That's where we should have been building power. And instead, we were like constantly squabbling over wording, and the
Can I ask you
wording
more
in
about that?
YA books and shit like that.
Can I
Like,
ask you more about that?
yeah.
You touched on something that's really a button issue for me. I don't know what I think about it, and I really
Okay.
want to poke your brain about this. So this is the kind of claim that you say is the claim that we need to be more on the ground, right? Doing real things. Okay? Is this, do I
No,
understand
not
correctly?
necessarily. I'm saying like when we were protesting the George Floyd killings, that was serious business.
Okay.
That was serious business. But sometimes the like social justice internet was in an uproar over like a young adult book
Okay.
that had like
Okay.
a problematic character. You know what I mean? Like we were
So what you're
getting,
saying is that we need to do real things, and real doesn't mean IRL. It means real. It means that
it
it
means,
actually
yeah, it means
has an impact.
things that are
Okay.
life and death, things that are impacting people's like concrete ability to live.
Yes.
Rather than like feelings. And this is also from Taiwo's books, like having all our energy being traveled into like feelings, people getting offended. We spend so much time on microaggressions, and I'm not saying microaggressions are like we should just let microaggressions pass, but why were we so focused on microaggressions and not
Were we though? Or was
in the
was
US?
this a narrative of the right that was mainly true for liberals? This
It
is
was
the
mainly
feeling that I get. That
in the
true
US.
radicals were not really interested in this.
I feel like no one was a true radical. Like very, very, very few. I feel like there was like 10 years there, like in the 2010s there was like a good chunk of time where all the young people that should have been radical were instead getting led into the weeds by false leaders, by elite capture, and all of our energy was being channeled into like some really pretty insignificant fights
Yes.
while we were ignoring the rise of fascism all around us,
So I think that I want to say something to kind of frame this discussion. On your screen now, audience, are three anarchists, right? And I think we all got to the conclusion that anarchism, whatever that means, we will talk about this maybe. Whatever it means is like the right answer to what's going on around us. And you talked, Tim, about how we need to learn from each other, okay? And I feel that it's very important that we say, yeah, we thought about all these like specific things all the time. We thought about the specific things and we had a specific answer here and a specific answer here. I'm talking about myself, but I'm assuming that you had the same experience. And I have a specific answer here and a specific answer here, and maybe I changed my mind here and maybe I changed my mind here, and it all leads somewhere. It all like there's a core that I keep searching for, and I think that the word anarchism in some way is the most accurate word that I heard to describe this core that I want to go to. And I want to talk about, because I think that as long as we don't like connect to this core that I think is important, we don't really know how to connect all the dots and see the full picture. So maybe we want to talk about this and then frame the discussion from there.
About the core?
Yes, about what anarchism is.
So for me, the core is that money and power are actually two sides of the same coin.
Yes.
Okay? Money and power are the same. And fascism, which is my enemy, is the intersection of like capitalism and authoritarianism, right? And if you want to fight fascism, you should be like diametrically opposed to it. You should be pulling on it from both like anti-capitalism and anti-authoritarianism. From like the intersection of both those places, that's where you're going to be the most effective. And for me, communism is, and communists will argue with me. And it's so funny because like communists will argue with me about anarchism and they'll be like, no, communism actually is anarchism. I'm like, then why don't you just call yourself an anarchist? But communism has some, to me, and some communists will like argue with my definition of this. Communists have some acceptance of, they accept more authoritarianism than I am comfortable with. They don't see it as an enemy that's equally as insidious as capitalism. And they think they can use authoritarianism to some extent. They think they can control it. They think they can harness it and use it to take down capitalism. And me, fundamentally, they're kind of they're the same thing. It's two sides of the same coin. Authoritarianism and capitalism is the same thing. I don't want what they're selling. You know what I mean? I've insulted the communists before and they've gotten very offended at me. I respect many communists.
Many of my friends, many of my comrades are communists.
I'll be the first to admit I have not read every single communist text. I am not as learned as some of them. Their texts tend to be dense.
Yep.
But I think some of them get lost in those weeds. But I just like fundamentally, I think that authoritarianism is equally dangerous as capitalism. Those things are equally my enemies. And I think the only way that you fight them is from an understanding that these things are equally insidious threats. And something else that communists say is like they think like, well, live in the real world. Like, how are you ever gonna how are you ever gonna get anything done if you're an anarchist? And this was one of the questions that I think you wanted to talk about is like, but I can hold anarchism as my ideal and still make compromises that erode fascism in whatever way I can. You know what I mean? But at my heart, at my core, anarchism is the ideal. That's where
for me, like, I think in my process of like becoming like really anti-Zionist, before that I had anarchist thought, like it was easier for me to question general ideas before like bringing it home, like so intimate. And the moment you bring it home, it's like, fuck, I've been part of a like horrible death machine that never stops, basically, never sleeps. But now, like, I find myself like we are both talking about it, that we're part of an organization that it's called ODSI, One Democratic State Initiative, and it's a Palestinian-led organization. And we did this exercise of like having a new constitution for the free democratic Palestinian state, and I'm like, isn't it fucked up that as an anarchist now I'm even playing in writing, and isn't it against all of what I believe in if I'm serious? And it's a general question, what is the right compromises? Because every time I think about it, okay, but the Palestinians are going through genocide and I cannot hold on to my pure anarchist views. But then some liberal Zionists give me this kind of same flavor of argument that why are you cannot get full justice. So why are you insisting? Because people like you insist on the full vision, we don't get anything in the middle, So, and then some kind, I don't know what's my answer for this. Like, what is the right compromise, and when do you give the whole idea that we're fighting for? That's kind of
Yeah. Well, in terms of I mean, in terms of a state, I can look at different state. I think that again, anarchism is the ideal. Fuck a liberal democracy, but I'll take a liberal democracy over a full dictatorship, right? Like that is closer to the anarchist ideal.
Will we though? Will we though? I don't know. I stopped knowing for sure.
Yeah, I mean, but over representative democracy, I'd love to see direct democracy.
Yeah.
Like that would be amazing, right? Let the people
the.
vote, let the people have power. So I think anything that gives the people power. If I was in some position of writing a constitution someday, I would be trying to give the people as much power as possible. How do
Mm.
you structure things to avoid the hoarding of power
Mhm.
as much, like control and limit the hoarding of power as much as you control and limit the hoarding of wealth?
Mhm.
Those would be my ideals.
I want to again frame what we're saying. Um, I feel like that I I feel that the reason. Okay, let me say something funny. We're all stubborn, right? There's
Yes.
like this weird thing that all three of us. I went to like this seminar about anarchism, and the guy who was talking there, he was talking about theory, blah blah blah, and then at some point he was like, "But you know what? The only thing that really matters here is that I hate being told what to do." And then I was like, "Oh my God, I relate so much." Like this is the thing. This is the thing that I hate being told what to do, and I think that everybody hates it or should hate it or both. Okay, like I feel like there's something.
Some people it's their kink, but they've got,
Yeah.
I don't
Okay. Outside of that, let's give one
know.
caveat. One. Okay.
No, but actually, seriously, some people
Yeah.
love being told what to do. Some people are terrified by not being told what to do. And I think it's unresolved childhood trauma. Like you were
Yeah.
like, I don't know.
Maybe childhood trauma is
Yeah.
one of the tools that the system uses to
Oh,
produce
that's where all of this
slaves.
starts. Yeah, this is where all of
Exactly.
this starts.
Okay, okay.
That's like I'm a parent and I try to be anarchist in my parenting, which
Mm.
is, I don't always succeed.
That's challenging, yes.
But like we are no punishment with our kids. We
Mm.
never, ever, ever have punished them
Mm.
because punishment is so fucked up.
Yes,
Like
yes,
it's
yes.
it degrades you. Like is what I realized, and
It's
I realized
corrupted.
when I was a teacher, because I was a teacher for 10 years. And when I was in teacher training, they trained us to punish a lot. I went through a like charter school network, which is like the school was run very militaristically and the kids would get demerits. And so every time if their shirt was untucked, if they said something without raising their hand in class, if they did any little thing, acted like children, we were supposed to give them these demerits. And I realized it was, first of all, it didn't work because it created this antagonism between me and the kids, and I'm trying to get them to learn. I'm trying to influence them to like read and ask questions and be curious and do homework and write well, and when I'm just more obsessed with asserting my authority, I just lose all that. And I realized it was so demeaning for me to have to walk over to their desk and bend over and write them a little, I'm writing you a little demerit. Like what, it's degrading to my humanity as the teacher. I've lost all there's two kinds of authority. There's the authority that comes from fear and obedience and oppression. And there's authority that comes from being trusted as an expert, as someone who has your best attention and heart, and someone who is, beloved, And I wanted the good authority. I wanted the genuine authority from the
Yeah.
students. I wanted them to give it to me freely. And so, I learned that through teaching. And just the less I punished, and that was just garbage, and just threw it out. And then by the time I was ready to be a parent, it was just like, yeah, I just think we're gonna do no punishment whatsoever. And my kids are great. And you know what? I was worried when she would go to school because I sent my daughter to public school, you know, public school, neighborhood school. and it's very authoritarian there. You know, like
Yeah,
that's
we
what
know.
but it's the real world. So I was worried, you know, if I raise her like this, is she going to be able to just not function in the real world? But but she does great in school. You know,
Mm.
she this when she had good teachers her first 2 years, and she just did awesome with them. This year she had a teacher who kind of struggling at the beginning. The teacher's struggling with managing the classroom, and the teacher's inconsistent and authoritarian, and you know, so my daughter was giving her pushback. So there was some conflicts at the beginning of the year, but I got involved. I had some conversations with the teacher, kind of explained our teaching philosophy. I kind of talked to her about like, look, I used to be a teacher. Here's some strategies I used to use. You know what I mean? And now things are good. You know, she's doing great and she gets great grades and everything. So I think that because at home she feels like safe and trusted and valued, when she goes into a dehumanizing situation like the school, she's has better resources for it, you know, and copes better. And people as parents assume the opposite. You know, when I was teaching, I would have, you know, parents who had to come in for like a parent teacher conference. And I would have parents tell me, like, don't worry, I'll beat his ass when we get home. Because this is Texas. It's legal to beat your children. And I would be like, please, oh, please don't. Please don't do that.
Yeah.
And those were the kids that were in the office for a reason. The kids that have the most trouble in school are the kids getting beat at home because they're unregulated, because they're being terrorized by the people who are supposed to care for them the most. You know what I mean? Like, and they don't handle authority well at all. And they are lashing out in every single way they can because they're in so much pain because they live in a scary, chaotic home environment. So, anyways, yes, everything is childhood trauma.
Yeah. You know, it's made what you said also made me think that I'm also a teacher, and like, and I had to do stuff like to teach drums, like kindergarten, and every time like I feel like that I go to authority or to use authority, I feel like, okay, now I'm compensating for me being a bad teacher because it's like I
Yeah.
couldn't get them being interested naturally, so I resort to force. That's what it is, like.
Yeah.
And instead of the teacher dealing with a situation that, oh, I lost them because they're bored, maybe it's okay. Maybe it's okay that they're bored and I need to find something to get their attention again, to make it more interesting, or just to give up, you know, like you don't have to
Yeah.
be the man in like, yeah, but
Well, and it's tough because schools are set up to be crowd control, not learning
yeah,
environments. Like you give way too many kids to a teacher. In order to like have that genuine authority, inspire kids to learn authentically, you have to have a personal connection with every kid.
yeah,
It's really hard to do that with like 30 kids in a room. You know what I
right,
mean? It's
In
almost
Israel,
a
40. In Israel, 40.
40, yeah.
Yeah.
So almost impossible, I
Yeah.
would say.
yeah,
You
It's
know,
very difficult.
I'm also a teacher, which is also interesting to think about
Interesting.
what is
Yeah.
going on here. And I also feel very similar to what you were talking about, to the things you were talking about. And I find it interesting that when you spoke about the students that were acting up in class, I was like, okay, so let's take the very same words and apply it to political situations. And I feel that there's something, this point of view, this tool to analyze reality called anarchism, the tool that always views hierarchical system, always views power in the center of the analysis, always sees where power is and how the hierarchies operates, because we understand that differences in power and unequal division of power and hierarchies create all these problems all the time. So now we can look at situations in the classroom, for example, where students are acting up, and then we see some specific interaction, but we can also look at political situations that are supposedly entirely irrelevant, like what is going on with the Palestinians in Gaza. And I think that it's the same kind of analysis is warranted. And also we can see how what goes on in the school is just a part of this system that oppresses, because in school, for example, in the schools that Elik and I went to inside the Zionist cult, we were indoctrinated heavily to cooperate with the system of hierarchies. It's all connected. It's all connected. And I think one of our jobs as teachers who became communicators of whatever is to communicate this and to help people see these connections. I think it's really important because otherwise we don't know what we're fighting. And we're kind of, throwing punches in the air without seeing what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask y'all about being teachers. So are you currently both teachers?
Well, to some capacity, right, Alec?
Yeah, like I'm teaching privately music, but I
Yeah,
used
yeah.
to teach also in schools.
I teach math. I taught in universities, but now I teach privately mainly. Yeah.
Privately.
Yeah.
Because I in the US, I feel like I could never get hired again.
Yeah.
The thing is,
Because of my anti-Zionism. Like I can't get
Yeah,
a job
I
anymore.
also like
let's talk about this. Let's talk about this a little bit. Yeah. But I will start. Okay, so one of the reasons that I left academia is exactly because of the kind of things that we are talking about. I wanted to bring something which is different and a little bit more anarchist. And I didn't call it that, but I feel like it had these elements. And I got a lot of backlash from the system, a lot of pushback from the system. And I realized that it's not something that I can do in academia to teach the way that I want to teach. And so to me it's like related to this. But now after October 7th, I see the reaction of people in academia. I see the reaction of my used to be colleagues, and they're fucking liberal Zionists, and they fucking support what's going on. And I know for a fact that if I had continued to work there during October 7th, I would not be working there anymore. I would not be in this place anymore, because it's impossible. It's impossible to deal with this kind of hostile environment where everybody around you supports this thing that is not letting you sleep at night. So I think this is
I'm fascinated though,
Yeah.
what's going to happen with the academia in Israel, because like, are there cracks appearing? Because even though the university boards in the US are refusing to divest, I was just talking to a publisher, someone who has like insider publishing information the other day. He was, I'm not going to say who, but he had talked to some Israeli publishers, and like, I mean, no one wants to buy Israeli books. The cultural boycott of Israel, they cannot overcome. Like the financial divestment, okay, the university boards are crushing it. They're not listening to the students. The BDS has not been like fully successful yet in a widespread way, but the cultural boycott of Israeli academia is, I think it's starting to be very real. So I'm just curious if like y'all have any
I'm not
insight.
in the know. I'm not in the know
Yeah,
right
you don't
now
know.
because I'm outside of academia, but I can guess, okay?
Yeah.
Because these people, they are liberal Zionists. This is what they are, okay? And a liberal Zionist is a very simple machine, a confusing machine, but a simple machine nonetheless. And I feel like they will start opposing what's going on, but not because of some deep, principled stand where they care about morality. And I'm including, like, philosophy professors here. I'm including most of them, okay? Like the people whose job it is to think about society, about morals, about ethics, about all about politics, about all these things, are so poisoned by this cult that it would take a lot for them to change their mind in a way that is significant. It would take less to make them change their mind in a way that is superficial, in the sense that they see that their interests lie in a different place. Okay, which is, I think, one of the main goals of the BDS, right? To just make it materially worthwhile for them to oppose the genocide, which I think they're starting to do. I think it's a movement that's starting to happen. But I personally feel very cynical about it. It's like, it's weird. It's weird that people around me are starting to come along to the position that I hold, but it feels so empty. It feels like I almost hate them more for this. You know, it's so weird.
They're showing up very late. I think though, there is something to be said for like fake it till you make it, even in terms of morality, you know, like if people come to a moral position because they're like materially compelled to, after some time, it can sink in.
Isn't that a form of punishment, though? Isn't that exactly what we oppose as anarchists? And here is, you know, this is like one of the points of the discussion.
So there's a fine line between like natural consequences and punishment, right? Punishment would be sanctioning Israel and starving your populace. You know what I mean? If all the countries in the world were like, we're actually going to sanction you and y'all can't get wheat anymore to feed your children. Like that's like, I think a societal you know, like what Israel does too.
Exactly.
Also right now worth mentioning, total humanitarian siege.
Yes.
For the last
But the
2
Gazans,
months.
like, it's worse because the Gazans, it's not that Israel says, actually, you can do something and then we stop. They're actually saying we're going to go for it anyway because your existence is on the land is the problem.
Right.
So,
They're not trying to change any behavior besides living.
So it's not even a punishment. It's just
it's just genocide.
It's just genocide. Shit. Yeah, it's just genocide. And genocide, I remind you all,
is bad.
Bad. Yeah. So yeah, but I think that, you know, I've known people in the US, like, you know, people who went along with Black Lives Matter at first, probably out of convenience, but like have arrived at like a deeper understanding. I do think it happens, you know, there's people who will do it out of an opportunity. And you know what? And if I'm being honest, like I can see it in myself too, because obviously, like my passion for justice in Palestine has deepened over time from like total ignorance to then like when I first started like hearing the word Palestine in college. Didn't hear it before that. Went to college. I went to a very leftist Jewish college called Oberlin. It's not Jewish, like a Jewish institution, just a lot of Jews go there. It was my first time like being in a really Jewish place.
But really leftist? Really leftist or Zionist leftist?
No, like really leftist.
Okay,
so
that's it.
I met anti-Zionist Jews for the first time in college, and but there were also a ton of Zionist Jews there. There was just a lot of Jews, but some of them were anti-Zionist, and they would fight. So I remember like watching Jews fight over Israel, Palestine, and being like, "You're a self-hating Jew, you're anti-Semitic," you know, the whole thing. And like at a party, you know, and I'm like drinking, and like in the moment I was like, this is a boring conversation, I'm gonna go outside, like, right, like I was like a selfish creature at the time, like I didn't give a fuck, but it sort of just stuck in my brain, you know. And then I was in social justice spaces for causes I cared about, namely, like I came to activism through environmentalism and climate change. That's what I cared about. I cared about, you know, the planet. And I was like in those environmental spaces. And so sometimes like, you know, inevitably someone would bring up Palestine or something. And I was one of those people who would be like, ooh, are they anti-Semitic? You know, like, I don't want to, you know, like, why are they bringing that up here? Like, they must be anti-Jewish, you know, what's up with lefties and anti-Semitism? It's so disappointing. Like, those were thoughts that I had. I'm not sure how often I expressed them. I'm not sure if I ever like shut someone down. This was a long time ago, but that's where I was, you know. And then I started to feel enough pressure from those people that I was like, I have to learn about this. Let me figure out about this. Then I started to read. And really, as soon as I started reading about it, I was like, oh, okay.
But is this a claim about you, or is this a claim about people? Like, this is the thing that I'm wondering. Are we special in some way because we avoided this?
We all might be a little neurodivergent.
We're definitely special in that way, but
we're outliers.
Yes.
but I think that this is a process that can happen to anybody, you know, and like even who I was, like how much I cared about Palestine on October 7th and how much I care about Palestine now, enormous difference.
Yes,
I
yes,
didn't know
yes.
anyone in Gaza. I had never talked to anyone in Gaza. And I'm like connected to these 10 families I've been fundraising for. Like I've cried over their deaths and their family. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Like it's
yes,
so much more personal now. So
yes, yes.
yeah,
For us as
I
well.
do think you can start from a very self-involved place with activism and eventually you'll end up
So do
truly.
you think,
I have
do you,
hope for your colleagues that are coming along.
okay. So do you think that this material thing is enough? I will phrase the question more clearly. So there is also, I think, a theoretical aspect to all of this. And I'm not saying theoretical in, abstract and boring. I'm saying there's something to understand here. And I feel like people who understand this something, I will try to say more what it is. Maybe it's anarchism, okay? Maybe it's just that. Who understand this something, okay, that there are systems of oppression and that all systems of oppression, a big part of it is that all systems of oppression are connected, and that it's weird or counterproductive or just divorced from reality to oppose certain systems of oppression when you're cooperating or indifferent to other systems of oppression. And I want to refer to a video that you posted, Sim, about how you don't get the Sim who calls for the liberation of Palestine without getting the Sim who is queer and trans and calls for sexual and gender liberation and liberation for patriarchy, right? So like all of this is connected, and I want to put more emphasis on this because I think that this is something that people should understand more, like to help themselves go through this process, that it's all connected, that like it's good to be in all of this.
Yeah. It two ways. I mean, it's tough because also though there's value in specializing and focusing
Mm.
on one thing. I've done the thing where I like try to show up for every cause.
Yeah.
You just diffuse yourself and you don't do anything really constructive, you know? So it's a balance. I think, you know, obviously like I'm focused on Palestine, but I think it is really important to draw connections between Palestine and what's happening in the United States with indigenous people and with Congo and Sudan and, you know, all these interconnected struggles all over the world, what's happening with queer people, with, you know, dehumanization of immigrants, like everything it is all connected. I think though we do also have to I think it's okay to specialize on one area and be like, okay, I'm a limited human. I don't want to focus
No,
on this.
of course. What I'm talking about is
Yeah.
awareness of what is going on. Not,
I think
I'm
yeah.
not saying that everybody should be an activist in every single cause. This is just
Yeah.
physically impossible. I'm just saying that we need to understand how the causes are connected and understand
Totally.
other causes, and definitely not participate in the oppression.
Yeah.
And like this is something that really prevents you from being an effective activist, I think.
Yeah. No, and I try to do that in my content. You know, I try to because people are there at this point, like people are here to hear me talk about Palestine.
Mhm.
But I try more and more to make those connections to other things because I think that's really valuable. Increasingly, after the sort of this right now we're in like a big book promo push, but I have like a series planned about connections between Palestine and climate change and really talking a lot more about climate change because that is the gigantic genocide on the horizon. I mean, we're talking hundreds of millions of people already, like this summer in India and Bangladesh. It's like there's possibly going to be massive heat waves killing thousands of people, and we need to start thinking about that as genocide as well.
I just need to comment that this is not about to be a genocide. This is already the
Yes.
biggest Holocaust
Yeah.
in the history of the
Yes.
planet.
Mass extinction. Yeah.
With respect to like number of victims, we are talking about hundreds of billions of victims who are not counted because they're not human. Hundreds
Yes.
of billions of victims every single moment they are enslaved, and this is if our audience doesn't know, maybe the second or third biggest cause for climate change is this industry that enslaves and that exploits and that mass slaughters hundreds of billions of animals every single moment. Okay, so please be aware of that as well. This is also highly related, intimately connected.
Yes. Yes. And so, yeah, anyways, these connections, the awareness is good. Making connections between different genocides, and certainly like the fact that this course that we're on, this capitalist authoritarian course, is incompatible with life continuing on the surface of the planet Earth.
Yeah.
Maybe deep sea thermal vents life okay, but surface of the Earth life is in big trouble. So, yeah.
So on that optimistic note, no,
On
I'm
that
kidding.
note,
Elik, do we have anything else to raise that we did? Like, there's like 20 things to raise that we didn't go enough into.
Yeah.
But Elik, one or two things that are important to you.
No, there's a lot of things. I was just wondering if we do want a bit, like, I like the structure of the book, and I kind of thought I would a bit want to know, like, you how it's connected, and it takes us maybe back to the subject of like Zionism and how to talk, because I feel like I kind of I have some questions around that, and like how to talk to people, who should we talk to, what and your book is built like with the chapters that everything is one subject that they used to say. I thought maybe we can go over through it, like, generally, just for also the audience.
Yeah, so thank you. So the book, the heart of the book is like 9 chapters where it's like I've taken the 9 biggest Zionist talking points. So you have things like, who are you to speak on Israel? Just a lot of Hasbara is like trying to discredit anybody from giving their opinion on this topic. And so I go into all the different ways they do that, and then, how you can sort of combat that. But the
thing about that, the thing I like the most is that if you live in Israel, they tell you, who are you to talk? You don't know what is anti-Semitism in Europe and around the world. And if you're outside of Israel, they say, who are you to talk? You don't live here. And
you're not Israeli, yes.
They have an answer for everything.
If you're not a Zionist, you're not allowed to talk.
Exactly. This is the upshot.
And there's a chapter on the Holocaust, but it's called "But the Holocaust," where how they weaponize that. There's a chapter called "But Hamas," where, they're going to ask you to condemn Hamas. They're going to talk about terrible things Hamas maybe has or has not done. Criticizing Israel as anti-Semitic. That's the longest chapter in the book. It's a tricky one in and of itself. So, and then each of the chapter kind of breaks down the different tactics they use, and then what my response to those are. And some of them are, like the first chapter is grounded in political theory. I talk a lot about that book I mentioned, Elite Capture. Some of the other books are more historical essays where I'm talking a lot about medieval and early modern Jewish history, which happens to be an expertise of mine because I was researching for a novel I was writing in 17th century Europe before I wrote this book. And a lot of what Jews were going through in 17th century Europe is very similar to what Gazans are facing in Palestine today. And I think it's just good history to talk about because everyone reaches for the Holocaust. A lot of American Jews don't even know their history before the Holocaust, like at all. So I think that like bringing in that, and that's a narrative that serves Zionism. And so I talk about why that is. So yeah, the book is breaking these down. And I say that Zionist trolls trained me to write this book. Like, thank you to the thousands of Zionist trolls who commented on my videos throughout this year, because they just threw at me every single one of their talking points. And again, at first, when you start arguing with Zionists, it feels like a lot. It feels like they have so many arguments and so much misinformation. But when you see these patterns, it's like 9. They have like 9 talking points. And that's 8. And once you've exposed them all, there's just nothing left because it's just all propaganda. So yes, thank you to the Zionist trolls. They threw everything they could at me. for a year, and then I wrote this book based on what I'd learned.
So I think
Yeah.
Alec and I experienced this bullshit for more than like even earlier than you were, and I think that this
Yeah.
was a disadvantage because I know that these kind of things that you talk about, the Zionist arguments that you talk about, is something that I've been hearing since age probably 0. So when it's like that, it's really hard to differentiate and to do this. So I think Elik and I both went through a process where we had to argue with people, and we found ourselves without answers because these arguments can be very tricky to
Yeah.
to dismantle. Okay.
Yeah.
But we went through the process. But it was like all of a sudden this mountain of bullshit came, and I think that because it wasn't inside you, you could
Yeah.
like organize it a little bit, and for us it was
I think
inside
so.
us, so it affects you emotionally in ways that you cannot control. It's just inside you. You're not detached from it.
No, I think your book, it's already useful to me, but I'm really like,
Yeah.
it's really, I think it could be very useful to many of our audience and to people as well, because I think the thing is, when you're encounter these arguments, you need to understand what is kind of the trick, right? And there's always a bait that you kind of shouldn't fall into, right? Like there's something they're trying to drag you into, and you need to know kind of not to go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
I'm really touched because I'm honestly very. I would think that I would have thought that y'all would have kind of read this and been like, oh yeah, we know all this already, you know?
There's knowing and there's knowing. We
Yeah.
know this from experience. We know the situations that you described. We know them intimately. I've experienced every single talking point that you raise.
Yeah.
Um,
Like
I,
you
I
said, Alec has been to the freaking kibbutz that I'm bringing up.
yeah, exactly.
It's
Okay,
like
so
very intimate for y'all. Yeah.
we've been in these conversations thousands of
Yeah.
times, but still, I think that dismantling these arguments is a very, very difficult. This is why they're so dangerous.
Yeah.
Because they're so manipulative, because they're so tricky, because deconstructing it takes so much work on so many levels, and this is why I think it's important that you help people do this, because you had this experience and you managed to do this to some satisfactory level, and this helps us as well. But I'm leading to a different question. Maybe I want to ask something that's like above this, okay? Because dismantling the arguments is good, but I don't know if it's the answer, because I know that when you actually come, like you go to battle, right? All of this kind of goes to shit because you say something and your very words are not being listened to, and there's so much happening like in the moment that even if you have the best arguments, I don't know if it's enough or the thing.
Well, yeah, for y'all, it's much tougher. So I am upfront in my book that my audience is not committed Zionists, and I really have never tried to reach them because there's so many hundreds of millions of people on the earth who aren't committed Zionists. They're just sort of apathetic, and it's like they're a much easier get. But y'all are, so you know what I mean? So I'm speaking to the vast majority of
Yeah, we don't have those around us.
yeah, USians who like just don't give a fuck, and they're like, I just want to drink my Starbucks. Like, why should I care about what's happening in Palestine?
Yeah.
They're an easier get. Y'all are doing yeah, you don't have that option. Like you're in the belly of the beast. And my hope is that the pressure again, like the pressure from the international community will eventually become so uncomfortable that at least these really committed Zionists will start putting on a face to appease people. And here's another analogy that I think is helpful. In the United States, long legacy of racism, right?
Oh, really? I haven't heard of it.
It's shocking.
Yeah.
But like in the South, like I have dear friends who are white social justice activists, like the most lefty people you can imagine, like people I know, descended from slave owners, and it's not that many generations back. You know what I mean? At some point, their slave owning relatives had to like put on a face and be like, you know what? in their hearts, they were probably still like, yes, the black people should be enslaved. But like after the Civil War, they had to like put on a certain face, right? And then their kids were like staunch advocates of segregation and Jim Crow. But at some point, that became socially unacceptable, and they had to sort of put on a face. And their kids were like still internally very racist, but oh, right. MLK was a hero, And so like each generation, your generation might never get there, but there's hope for their kids, because they're at some point, your generation might be pressured by the international community to putting on a face and saying like, oh yes, what we did in Gaza was bad. We are that I wasn't for that. You know what I mean? Like, and it'll be totally fake, but for their kids, it might be a different story. So,
but it's a bit more difficult here, because like Zionists need to give up their whole like what I'm a bit worried that like Israelis feel that they need to give up the whole identity, the whole story, and they're like, what do you offer us instead? Like it's not that there is a concept even of a Hebrew culture in Palestine that is
disconnected from Zionism.
Disconnected from Zionism. Like you have to create something new, and I don't know.
Y'all are doing that. And I know it's like lonely and it feels like it's just the two of you. I know because it feels that way as a member of Jewish Voice for Peace Houston. But you know what? When we founded JVP Houston 4 years ago, there were 4 of us. And now there's like 50 people on our list, like 30 people regularly showing up to events. You know what I mean? Like it's grown so much in just a few years. And so I have to believe that building anti-Zionist community, Jewish community in the US, in the South, there's huge communities in like I went to Oakland and it's like amazing. They have like 300 members of, JVP or something. Active members, involved members. Same with New York. But in Houston, there's like a few dozen of us, and it's slow going, but we're building that community. It has to start from 0 somewhere. It has to start from 2 people.
Yeah.
That's a community. A community of 2 is a community. Y'all are building it,
Yeah, that's the way to look at it. Honestly, I keep thinking if it's even moral to live here in a way, because this society is so normalizing the genocide and
I think y'all's doing such important work. Just
thank you. It's really good to hear.
Yeah,
but,
thank you so much.
Like Dan, a friend told me 2 days ago. He said it's like, it's like you're sitting in a apartment that the original owners are stuck in the basement, and once a while you go and slaughter them. And then you, like the one who says, I'm the anti-Zionist Jew, you're like saying, I'm against it, we shouldn't do it. Daddy, can you pass me the salt, please? Like, how is it? Is it all what, like, and then sometimes when I feel it strong, I'm like, fuck, maybe I need to, like, I don't have anything to do with this. I don't want to cooperate with people who serve in the army. It's hard to think about it, but I don't know. Sometimes I have these thoughts.
But I think so. But the thing is, what y'all are doing, just living there, and you're making as much public speech as you can. I've seen videos of you in the streets, man. And you're putting out this podcast every week. Like
not every week. Let's not promise what we cannot deliver.
Okay, sorry.
Every month.
Oh, consistently.
Once every 2 weeks, whatever.
Y'all, if you move to the United States, like let's say you moved to the United States, you wouldn't feel as yucky, maybe, but you're still complicit. I mean, here in the US, we're just further from it, but it's our taxpayer dollars. It's our bombs built here. You go to the UK, they're building the bombs there. They're sending weapons systems over. Every Western culture in the world is complicit. And when you talk about financial markets and investment, we're all complicit. And y'all are in the heart of like the yucky core the most violent arm of this colonial empire, and you're standing up there. It takes enormous courage. I think it's good.
Thank
I
you
mean,
so
I know
much.
there's some people that disagree with me. And honestly, I think a lot, and I talk about this in the first chapter of the book, which I think y'all have read. I think that the so-called Palestinian online activists that like hate on you guys and like people like Hadarko and like Israeli anti-Zionist Jews, I think a lot of that is an op. I think, there
Yeah.
may be
Oh,
like
really?
no, I
It's not
really do.
about
I
that
think,
though. Like it bothers us if people say nasty things, of
yeah,
course, it would bother, but it's not, I don't think it's about that. I think Elik described here something that is really just something that we haven't resolved because I think uh, the reason that I'm kind of okay with it is that I see that it's unresolvable. Like the
yeah,
system puts you in situations that are so twisted. Like we started from talking about how weird it is to speak to people around here and how Zionists are so like warped in the head. But this is just a result of how twisted reality is, right? And
yeah.
reality is twisted around us. And basically, like there's no correct answer for this. There isn't. There isn't. Elik,
You
you will never find it. There is no
you might
correct answer to this
you
question. There
might
is no.
make yourself more comfortable if
Yeah.
you move to the US.
Yes.
You might make yourself more comfortable, but you would not be more moral. You know what I
Yes.
mean? It
Yes. I
wouldn't be
don't think
more
that there's.
moral to be in the US. It would be more
Yes.
comfortable. But
Yeah.
and I think y'all are fighting for the souls of your family. And I think that that's no, I think that because my
And we're
mom,
kind of winning. We're kind of winning.
that's
Elik's
and
parents
that's
are coming
amazing.
around. Yeah.
And that's important. I think social transformation begins at the family again, like with
Yeah.
parenting. And I'm in it with my mom. My mom is very right wing. She was like a lifelong Democrat until Obama, and then she became a Trump voter. And I don't know what
Mm.
happened. And she hasn't talked to me. She didn't talk to me because of my stance on Palestine and my queerness and the vaccines. She called me a terrorist in 2021 during like the Sheikh Jarrah stuff in the Palestine movement. Then
Mhm.
she called me a terrorist, and she didn't talk to me until
Wow.
Christmas of this year.
Wow.
Like
Really?
December. Yeah, she didn't talk to me for 3 years.
Wow.
Refused to talk to me. Didn't talk to her grandkids. Nothing. I offered like you can say hi to your
Wow.
grandkids. Nothing. So she's just
Wow.
started talking to me again, and I'm trying something new. Like I'm part of it is like I think she might have a little dementia, and so
Mm.
and so I've been watching videos on how like um you can't like if someone has dementia, like you can't, and I think having Zionism is kind of like having dementia.
I was
You can't
thinking the same thing.
you can't argue with them. Like if they're
Mm.
like, "Oh, I want to see, my husband," or like, "Where's my husband?" and he's dead, you don't be
Yeah.
like, "He's dead." You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
don't like confront them so head on. You just kind of go with it and then kind of try to shift them to a different tack or something, like distract them like you would with a toddler. And so with my mom, she'll go on about some crazy right-wing conspiracy theory, but I'll find something, some value that she has, something we can build from, something we can connect from. You know what I mean? And as a teenager, and when I was in my younger years, I would like everything she was saying that was like not in line with my ideology. I would just like fight, fight, fight. You know what I mean? Like as confrontationally as possible, the way I do with trolls on the internet. But now, with my aging mother, who I know is like living in this totally different informational world from me, she's in like
Mm.
very right wing online spaces. I'm like, if I do that, she's just going to cut me off again for 3 years. So, where can I like find something we can build from? You know what I mean?
What do you think changed that made her want to speak with you again? If that's too personal.
I don't know for sure.
But are there doubts?
Um,
Are there doubts? Is
yes,
this the thing?
I think it's actually like doubts in her political reality.
I see.
And I don't want to go into it because it's like a little bit personal and
Yes,
that's
of
like her
course, of course.
story. But yes, I think she started to see again those cracks in the wall
Hmm.
enough that, and maybe she missed me. I don't know.
Maybe
Yeah,
it's the material combining with the ideological again, right? It's the
and the
same.
personal, right? Yes.
Yeah,
If the ideological starts to break down, then the personal
yeah,
starts
yeah,
to matter
yeah.
more.
I want to tell maybe a similar story that in the last few days, I heard my father say a few things, not about Palestine, okay? Like there's progress with Palestine as well. My father is a Zionist, but he's like my proof for how you can just like it doesn't say anything deep about you that you're a Zionist if you were born in certain circumstances. It's just like almost everyone. So about the Zionism, it's a tough nut to crack, but there's a lot of progress in the other front of exploitation of non-human animals, and he told me that he is starting to become more vegan. He even said, "I'm thinking about blah blah." This is the result of 13 years, 14 years of like every trick. I spoke from the heart. I yelled. I explained. I was upset. I gave sanctions. I every single thing, every single trick in the book for 14 years. And I think there's some positive change going on. So people, don't give up on your friends, don't give up on your family. They can come around at some point. Okay, let's put this on the table. That it is possible. It is possible. Just takes
I
a
think
lot
it
of
is.
work.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for the day all the Zionists will come and like, Ellie, you were right. Help
Yeah.
us. What are we doing now? What are we doing? How do we?
Don't hold your
And
breath,
then I
Alec.
will be enough, like, we will be enough, like, Palestinians and anti-Zionist, like, Jews will say, like, come, we have an explanation for you, how to do it, how you de-Zionize yourself, and everything okay.
Well, so let's finish with this. Sim, can you paint for us, please, a picture
Mhm.
of something happening in Palestine, all around the world, okay, that would lead to like what is your optimistic vision for what is happening in Palestine, but including what we need to do to make it happen? I know it's a difficult one, but maybe
In 5 minutes.
yes, in 5 minutes.
Like my vision for a free Palestine, or
Like how would it
like
happen? How would it happen?
um look, people have a lot of power. We are so powerful. The people are so powerful. We've only been convinced that we're not powerful. You know, as soon as we recognize our own power, we will be powerful.
So
And we can make a lot.
what is our
So,
power and
so
how do we
yeah,
express it?
collective
Yes.
action, caring for one another, doing, the things that the human heart wants to do, which is share with each other and meet each other's needs and live in community. And a lot of people have been asking me the question on a lot of podcasts I've been going on, what is giving you hope right now? Give us hope. People look to me, they want hope. And I'm actually getting sick of that question. I think a better question is, what gives you courage? We need to be asking, or hope is like a little bit childish. Like oh, I need to hope. I need to believe it's going to work out to do the morally courageous
Yes,
thing.
it's a little
Well,
bit
actually, no, you
disconnected
don't.
from reality.
It's not correct. Yeah, you should do the morally courageous thing even if there's no hope. That's where we need to get. That's when we'll be powerful. When we get there.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, ask yourself, what's gonna make me courageous? What gives me courage? I think that's a better question.
So
Okay,
how
so
do
do you
you
have
answer it?
yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's, and it's like a scary time in the US. Like people are being deported for or trying to get deported for just like saying free Palestine. And obviously as a white US citizen, I have like a lot of protection against that at this point. But we know from looking at history, as I do, that could rapidly change, that those freedoms could rapidly evaporate. Sometimes it happens
That's
in a
what
matter,
we feel as Jews in occupied Palestine.
yeah, in a matter of weeks or
Similar.
months, I could be arrested. Um, so I'm actually sort of bracing myself for that, and I've found so much courage. I'm so much more of a more courageous person now than I was 17 months ago when I started speaking out about Palestine. And part of that is, what gives me courage is like getting to know Palestinians, which is like reading books, educating yourself about the people who are the real victims in the world. We are in the imperial core. We are not victims. Jews of the world. We are actually not the victims right now. We are the perpetrators. We are benefiting from systems of horrible slavery and oppression. So like, something I've encouraged activists to do and stuff is like get connected to like choose a family in Gaza to care about and fundraise for them and like talk to them. It's social media. They all speak English, like mostly, or they can use translate apps. Like make it fucking personal. And that gives me a ton of courage. This is kind of silly, but like, well, it's like some people will think it's silly, but like I memorized Rafat Al-Hariri's poem, If I Must Die. It is such a powerful poem. And I was like, if I'm detained, I want to just have that with me, right? They can't take that from me. So I've been like memorizing poetry and like some Buddhist like teachings and stuff to like if I'm actually jailed, which I don't think I'm in imminent danger of it. My undocumented neighbors are absolutely. My undocumented comrades are in great danger for right now. Like I'm protected, I'm fine. But just to like prepare myself, to give myself courage, to make myself prepared, the only thing I can think to do is like memorizing poetry. So that's what I'm doing. So, I just think, and then the courage is a practice. You do one courageous thing. It's hard to speak out the first time. It's scary to go to your first protest. It's scary to make your first post about Palestine. And it gets easier over time. It gets less scary over time. And so I just think that, practice it. Practice courage. And name courage as something that you're wanting for. And don't expect someone to give you hope before you're willing to do something courageous. You know what I mean? Just do the courageous thing.
Very much. We know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
I
it's
really appreciate y'all so much. I really do. And this was I really value that. This was an amazing conversation. This was really cool.
Okay,
Yeah,
we
thank
need
you so much.
to close this up. So
Yes.
thank you so much.
Okay, wait, I want to plug the book again real quick.
Yeah, do it.
So Genocide Bad, the subtitle is Its Notes on Palestine, Jewish History, and Collective Liberation. It's written by me, anti-Zionist Jewish author. It's coming out with Interlink Press, which is the only Palestinian-owned press in the US. It can be a little tricky to get it outside of the US. Ideally, we're not going through Amazon, but most people going to their local bookstore in other countries in the world, your local bookstore can get it for you. Okay, so that's the best way if you're outside the US. If you're in occupied Palestine, please consider buying it from the Educational Bookshop in Jerusalem. It's a wonderful Palestinian-owned bookshop, and their owners have been arrested twice in like the last couple months.
I think I'll go and buy it there. I think
they will
that's a
have
good
it in
one.
stock.
It's a radical act of resistance.
Yes. They're a lovely bookstore. It comes out April 22nd, and sales between now and April 29th are really key. We're really hoping to hit bestseller lists so that the book comes kind of unavoidable and it'll get more press coverage. So sales between now and the 29th of April are really crucial. If you can get it then in paperback, that is ideal.
Okay, so everyone, please go and get Sim's amazing book. And thank you so much, Sim, for being with us and for having this amazing conversation, enlightening conversation. I feel smarter and more aware already.
Me too. Thank you. It was lovely.
And thank you to the audience for being with us. Thank you, Elik, again. Okay, so bye-bye, everyone. And let's all have courage so that we can free Palestine and the entire planet.
Yeah.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.